Welcome back to the Lapdown Podcast. And if you could all join me briefly for a minute of silence in honor of Daniel Ricciardo. Unfortunately, minute silence don't really work on a podcast, so that'll probably do. I'm Alex. The next voice you're going to hear is Dan. We're mourning Daniel Ricciardo, and we've got some F1 to talk about. Dan, how are we?
I'm good. Well, I say I'm good. I'm confused, I think is probably the way to describe it. And that is exclusively about Daniel Ricciardo. But I think probably what we need to do first is kind of make sure if you're watching this or listening to this, drop us a nice little review or a subscribe or a like and things like that. Follow us on the social media things because that would be nice.
Yes.
Then we had... Well, we're late, aren't we? Singapore happened last weekend. It's now Friday. We'll box that off in about 5 minutes and then just spent the rest of this episode talking about Daniel Ricciardo and trying to figure out how that happened, why it happened, how it's happened, if there's anything next, and all this other good stuff. But Singapore, on the lap down banger scale, was, I would say, probably a 3. I was unbanged from Singapore.
Yeah. It was an unbangy Grand Prix, isn't it? Yeah. If anything, it might have actually undone some of the banging of Grand Prix before it. It might be having like a detrimental overall effect on the levels of bang. She didn't bang at any point, and it didn't even have a saviour. It could have had a saviour. It didn't have a saviour.
No, it was tough. I mean, what I will say, it looks like a hell of a place to go for a Formula One weekend. And I suspect everybody there for that weekend, when they were dancing along to Kylie Minogue, they would consider themselves significantly banged.
Yes.
Banged to a level of kind of fulfilled. I reckon they feel filled from their banging. Whereas I think for the rest of us around the world, sat on the sofas in front of the TV, you're just left wanting more. And it kind of made me think of a few things that I just want to talk about. I know you're obviously a pretty newcomer to this world of Formula One relatively, but when Singapore was kind of first announced, obviously it's still the first night race, the original.
Well, it says it on the side of the building.
Exactly. And it's true. They can never take that away. But at the end of the Raffles Boulevard Straight, there was a fucking amazing chicane that people used to have to like get their big bollocks on and then bounce over the curbs and get there through, and they'd wiggle all the way through, and that was really good. And they've got rid of that. I don't know why.
It's coming back though, isn't it? I think.
I don't know.
I think they got rid of it to work on a grandstand, or they're doing something in that area, which means it can't be there. But I think it's coming back.
Wonderful news. I had no idea where I was a lot of the time. You've made this point a couple of times with street circuits. I was watching it, and then Crofty went, and DRS is activated. And I went, oh shit, have we had 2 laps of this, have we? Like, I hadn't even clocked the fact that they'd come over the start-finish line. And also, is it too long?
It does feel like it goes for a while. I think we've been on this train a couple of times in that It's the Pirelli conundrum, isn't it? Of Pirelli don't want to make themselves look bad as a tyre manufacturer by making tyres that fundamentally don't work as tyres. I think all F1 fans would love tyres that just didn't fully work all of the time.
Are we allowed to talk about tyres?
Yeah.
George Russell spoke about tyres, and then George Russell's not allowed to speak about tyres. And also, don't swear. Whatever the fuck you do not fucking swear.
Do not get the little E on the corner of your pod. That's a thing we can come back to in a little bit as well, actually. Look, because F1 races have to be a minimum of 190 miles, but it is a minimum. That you could go 190.1. I don't actually know how long the Singapore Grand Prix is in miles. I don't think we would necessarily be saying the Singapore Grand Prix is too long if it had to be a 2-stopper. If it was the Qatar theory of we are mandating a 2 or even 3-stopper, and we are orchestrating action, but orchestrating action is better than no action at all. And I think, look, it's all the things you said it is. It's glitzy, it's glamorous, but like a lot of glitzy and glamorous things, it's a little bit soulless at times as a result.
Good news, we got Vegas next, I think.
Here we go.
Oh, no, we got Austin, and then Vegas is coming up. So, lots of glitz, lots of glamour, lack of soul. Was there anything really to talk about from the Grand Prix? I know Lando obviously won, didn't he?
He gold. He gold. I think Max is still trying to close that gap to less than 20 seconds now. And Lando's been stopped for a week, and Max has still not quite caught him. Like, I mean, he checked out, didn't he? No, not as a Grand Prix as a whole. A little bit of paint chat. We've not had paint chat for a lot of weeks, so it's nice to welcome back some paint chat. McLaren paint chat, scale of 1 to 10 or rating out of 10?
I'll be honest with you. Whilst they were on track, I didn't really notice.
Okay.
So I think that probably answers that question. I don't know what number to give it. But yeah, white doesn't look white. I just don't think white looks amazing on a Formula One car. The Mercedes, on the other hand.
Well, the Mercedes that came dressed as an Aston Martin?
Well, it was slightly different shade of green, wasn't it? But I liked it.
It's as if the Mercedes borrowed the British Racing green paint from the Aston Martin garage, but had left a white undercoat and maybe didn't have enough paint, so they went quite like measly with the roller. So you could still see some of that white coming through from underneath. So it's just a washed out British Racing green.
Okay. So you liked the McLaren and didn't like the Mercedes. I liked the Mercedes and didn't like the McLaren. I think it's
and I think we could both agree the RB looks shit. So
yeah, I mean, whatever you do with a car when it's running around last,
don't put jeans on it.
Does it?
Let's not put jeans on it. That's not. It's Singapore. I don't think you're legally allowed to wear jeans in Singapore. I think that's probably one of their many laws that, it's the chewing gum thing and whatever. I dare say jeans are outlawed. Also, it's 100 million degrees and 110% humidity. We're not wearing denim. What are you doing? Yeah. Kota, absolutely. Would be banging at Kota, put a cowboy buckle on it, job done. Not in Singapore. And also Red Bull's livery that they were supposed to have and ran a whole massive competition for and then got rid of because they're slow.
Yeah. I mean,
you've got to bite the bullet at that point, don't you? And go, we've run a whole competition. We've let people submit designs. We've picked the design. You can't just then go, nah, sorry.
I think so. You can just stick it on Perez's car because that won't make a difference anyway because he's a slow boy.
Slow boy.
It really doesn't matter what you do with his car. You could cover him in all kinds of Dulux paint and he'd still probably finish 10th.
Yes. Leading the Destructors now, by the way, Checo Perez. He's overtaken Logan Sargent, who managed to crash his way out of the sport. And he's now beating him. So, I mean, that's an effort, isn't it?
What a guy.
That's an effort.
My guy. I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about Sergio in a little bit because he is a favourite child of the podcast, but not as favoured as Franco Colapinto. And every time we talk about Franco Colapinto, TikTok just jizzes all over the place.
Welcome, Argentina, by the way, to the podcast. All of it. All of Argentina. We could sit down someday and enjoy a delicious tea together. Don't say tea. Whatever you do not call mate tea. That is a dangerous game to play with the Argentinians.
I quite like a trip to Buenos Aires.
Oh, why not? We can write it off as tax, I think, if we go there as the official podcast of Argentinian F1. Right, Franco Colapinto, what a guy again. Just when you thought you couldn't like this bloke enough, he goes and sends it down the inside of half of the grid into turn one, makes up I think he might have lapped the field through turn one and came back around again and then nestled down in like 8th or something. I love the bloke. He's incredible.
It's so good. And the best thing about the dive bomb was as well, is that Alex Albon completely lost his shit about it.
Oh, but then also went full circle.
Yeah. Albono, he's kind of turned up and he's gone, this young whippersnapper, I don't need to worry about. Fuck, where the fuck does he come from? And through goes Colapinto. And the next thing you know, look, maybe Williams have just maybe they should have just backed him. Give him the contract.
Is it too late? Is it too late for us to make enough noise to get Franco in the seat and let Carlos? Carlos can go to RB. Get rid of Liam. Fuck Liam.
What do you reckon the odds are of one of our 20 listeners or 22 listeners is James Vowles?
Oh, we've said nice things about him.
We have.
We've said nice things about Williams. We've said nice things about Albon. And now we are the official podcast of Franco Colapinto. So I don't see why not. I think it's highly possible.
I think he's in a pretty good place though, because I look at this and yes, okay, he's not going to have a seat next year because Williams are kind of in that lower. Well, they are in that lower league, aren't they? Of Formula One, they're in Formula B or whatever people call it. So it's not like he's going to go and fill in somewhere else and then come back to Williams. It would be the other way around if that were to happen. But I think there's obviously a massive likelihood the fact that Williams won't be able to keep hold of Albon and Sainz for a long-term situation. If this thing doesn't work in 25 or 26 and Vowles has actually kind of led us all up the garden path here with what Williams are creating and bringing themselves back to the good old days, if that doesn't happen, you're going to have Audi there that are going to be tapping up Carlos because of the link through to his dad. Potentially Albon, when and if people move, like Alonso retires, Hamilton retires, there's going to be seats become available further up the grid. Could one of them move to fill in one of those seats? And actually then Williams have got Franco Colapinto to come and sit back in one of those seats. Maybe a season and a half, 2 seasons after this one ends. So I don't think he's in a bad spot at all.
No, and I think the fact that, I mean, it's like 3 races. Okay, Nick de Vries had a race and everyone thought Nick de Vries could drive an F1 car. I'm not suggesting by any means that he's an Argentinian Nick de Vries. That's very rude. But, you know, it's a small sample size, but the sample size that is there is a bloody good sample. I mean, if you're walking around a supermarket and someone gives you a sample of that, you're buying a packet to take home, aren't you? So, yeah, I think Williams will try and hang on to him. I think it's a very good point around keeping Albon and Sainz. Offshoot, very quick question, gut reaction. Albon, any chance back to Red Bull if Max goes for 26, or are Red Bull done with Albon?
Yeah, I think they're done.
Yeah, I agree.
I think they're done.
More likely, I could see a George Russell to Red Bull and an Albon to Mercedes. I could see that happening.
The second I think you leave the special island, I don't necessarily think you come back on the special island.
Yeah.
I think is probably the way that I would describe it. So yeah, I think he's probably done.
Yep, I would agree. I think just to box off, I've got more to talk about with our boy.
Go on then. Sorry, carry on.
But more so, I think just to put a little bit more meat on the Colapinto bone, that he's settled in really quickly as well, and I think that's another massive tick. That okay, it was a little bit of a joke maybe initially of like, right, new boy's in, he's going to be our favourite, but actually he doesn't stick out anymore. And it's you know, when Behrman did his Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, you were constantly looking for him on the timing chart, and the commentators kept going back to him because he was an anomaly. He was, you know, a little flavour of the week sort of thing. Yeah. Colapinto has now actually just settled into the field, is out qualifying Albon last week and qualifying within 7/1000ths of a second this week, and just kind of became one of the 20. And that's quite nice that he's just settled in immediately. He's got his Mate that's not a T, and he's just here for like 8 weeks, and then he goes again. But while he's here, he's actually doing it properly.
I think it just shows how bad Logan Sargent was as a driver. And yeah, props to Franco. Like he's walked in, he's absolutely smashed it. It's been a free hit. He might not have had the cojones to kind of do what he's done over the last 3 races, and we don't know what he's going to do for the next. But I think Williams are probably going to pick up a few more points, and I think they're probably going to end up in a much better position going into 2025 because of the efforts and the work by Franco Colapinto. Yeah. And that's probably going to far exceed James Vowles and Williams' expectations of putting him in the car, because I think everybody probably thought it was going to be a case of get in there, don't put it in a wall.
Yeah, I think we said that exact thing, didn't we?
We might see you in 18 months' time type thing.
Yeah. I think literally almost word for word what we said is all he has to do is just not put it in the wall. Don't try and finish 6th. Actually now, try bloody hard to finish 6th, son. Like, you're a good chance to finish 6th.
You've got this, Franco.
Come on, Franco. Fucking send it, son.
You've got it. You've got it. Right, can we talk about Daniel?
Yeah, we could talk about Daniel for as long as you want to talk about Daniel.
Right, okay. Would you like to open on Daniel?
The Daniel situation has been coming for a long time, and I think it's I might be misreading it. I think everyone sort of agreed that he doesn't not deserve to have lost his seat, which I don't think is necessarily anyone's point, and I don't think anyone is crying that he's lost his seat. He came in, he had a bit of a job to do to absolutely dust Yuki. He didn't quite do that. Okay, he came in maybe into that seat as a Red Bull waiting room, and all of that happened. Doesn't make sense anymore for Danny Rick to be in that seat. It's just not, it doesn't make any sense for anyone except maybe the coffers of V-Carb and the Red Bull family with bringing in some sponsors. Yeah. Go put your feet up, Danny, outside that. But go put your feet up with a dignified exit, and it was just absolutely, you can't say, Ben Suleiman, block your ears. It was fucked the way that all went down in Singapore. I will do my day's community service on a Danny Rick ranch because that was fucked.
Yeah. He's been poorly treated. It's kind of interesting though, because I've been looking at some numbers for Danny Rick, and I don't necessarily know if he's as good as what people think he is.
Oh, here we go. Now you're coming out swinging.
And don't get, like, I want to go early on this.
He's just died, Daniel.
I love him.
He's not even in the ground yet.
Look, the way that the Formula One world has reacted, you'd be thinking we're talking about kind of a multiple world champion that's been booted out of the sport here. Mm-hmm. He's had 14 seasons in Formula One, clearly not won one of the championships. In those 14 seasons, 257 race starts. He has 8 race wins. He has 32 podiums, 3 pole positions from 257 starts.
That's a lot less than I would have expected on pole positions.
And an accumulation of 1,329 points in an era of Formula One where if you finish 21st, you still get a point. So, like, they're the numbers. When you compare them to other people, Juan Pablo Montoya, Charles Leclerc, they both have 7 race wins themselves. Sergio Perez has 6. Ugh. He has 5 race wins less than David Coulthard, who seems to get ridiculed by the Formula One kind of family every time he speaks. And Damon Hill, who Formula One fans hate, has 22 race wins to his name and a World Drivers' title to his tally. I feel like the response, the fallout from Daniel Ricciardo here is slightly overwhelming. It's slightly oversold, I think. But I will say, and I think I know why, I think he's one of those drivers that as a collective, Formula One fans really, really enjoy. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no decisiveness here. He's won 8 Grand Prix, but he unifies everybody. He collects them. Lewis Hamilton has won 105 Grand Prix, yet we've still got people going, well, he's shit, isn't he?
Yeah.
Max Verstappen lost 1 race last year. He's won 61, and people go, well, he's shit. He just crashes all the time, drives into people. But Daniel Ricciardo, I think, means more than just pure numbers. He feels like an approachable bloke. He feels relatable, like he's a vibrant human being. And he also, I think mostly, it kind of feels like he's your mate, but you've never actually met him and he's never going to be your mate. And I think that's probably why everybody's kind of gone, this is really sad, the fact that one of the nicest, warmest human beings on the grid, one with a genuine personality, isn't going to be there now.
I think the personality thing is a lot of it. I think it was GQ Australia came off the long run with their Insta caption about Danny Rick and bigged him up massively. But I think they called him one of the great F1 drivers, or one of the greatest F1 drivers, or something like that.
Well, he isn't.
But here's the thing with Danny Rick. I am willing to call him one of F1's greatest ever drivers if we are considering their impact on the sport, not necessarily their actual statistics. Because I think you will struggle to find, like what you've said there, you'll struggle to find someone who's maybe had more of an impact on F1's image, popularity, number of people watching it, people talking about it, that sort of thing, than Danny Rick. He is not a Michael Schumacher on track, but he may well have done more for the sport in modern times off track than what Schumacher did in his prime, because he rode a horse into the paddock, because he, does this, that, and the other. And at the end of the day, his job was to drive the car fast, and he hasn't done that recently. So, again, absolutely, I cannot argue with, as a Danny Rick fan who used to live around the corner from him and his mum was my Tupperware lady, I cannot argue with him not being in that car anymore, and I cannot argue with Liam Lawson going in. It makes sense. But I think there's a bigger picture there, and I think that's why everyone does, is so heartbroken, to use a really dramatic word over it. But I also think it's the circumstances of it that has prompted a lot of that as well. Because I think when you watch someone drowning in front of you, that you all know he's drowning, you've got a long time to be sad about it until they actually drown. You've already worked out what you wanted to say, and
Yeah.
For the purpose of this, let's call it like a stray seagull or something rather than a human that was drowning. Let's not get too dramatic. But
Good idea.
It was just so fumbled by an organization that is so focused on optics, and people forget Red Bull is in the sport to sell fizzy drinks. Red Bull is not a racing team. They're a drinks company who use a racing team and blokes riding bikes on trains and, all of these other things, ultimately to sell more caffeinated fizzy drink. They're all about image and PR, and they've absolutely Perez'd it into the wall on, the whole Danny Rick situation. They could have said in the week between Baku and Singapore, hey, they're going to be Danny Rick's last one, and then Liam's in. And I think everyone would have gone, yeah, you know what? Yeah, nah, fair enough. Hey, let's bloody send it for Danny Rick. And they would have organised that Danny Rick was going to be driver of the day. There would have been an online thing of that. Sky would have done a package with him beforehand. It would have been neat. Crofty would have given it the big line on the final lap, and they would have shown him across the line on the final lap, and it would have been great. Send the fireworks up in the shape of Danny Rick. Everyone's happy. Instead, we got one of the most awkward weekends I've seen of F1, since Abu Dhabi 2021.
Yeah, I mean, I won't agree with you that he's one of the greatest Formula One drivers ever. Like there are world champions with a lower stock value than Daniel Ricciardo, and I don't think that would be fair to call him one of the greatest. I think he's been an incredible ambassador for the sport. And I don't disagree with a single word that you said with regards to the efforts that unknowingly he has done to engage people into the sport, because he hasn't been employed as an F1 ambassador. He's just been Daniel Ricciardo. I think it felt, it was weird, wasn't it? Like he knew it was happening.
Yeah.
He had been told, but he'd also been told, like, don't you dare say anything about this type thing. And it was such a weird thing. But at the point that kind of he doesn't just say it, if that makes sense, because he knew it was all done. Like,
he also said it in every possible way apart from saying it.
Yeah, but at that point there, if you've got no face to save anymore, who are you protecting at that point?
Yeah,
come out and say it. Have your glory. Have your moment on the red carpet. Have your handshakes and your hugs with your drivers and your teammates.
Ride a dragon into the paddock.
Yeah. Do some burnouts on the start-finish line when you finish and stuff like that. Just get on and kind of celebrate the end of what has been a good Formula One career. Like, it's been very good. And I will always say he'll be one of my favourite human beings in Formula One. Like, there's no doubt about that. And go for it. But it just makes, because he didn't do that. And I'm going to get my kind of, not a tinfoil hat on here, but I'm going to start kind of theorizing things. Mm-hmm. But if he did continue to save face for Red Bull and that family and Formula One generally, I don't necessarily know why we're all kind of saying that he's done, that he's just finished. Like, is that really it? Like, he is just gone. He's won 8 Grand Prix. He's had 32 podiums. We've got a Mexican bloke in the big team that literally can't finish a race in the points. We've got a couple of seats left on the grid that could kind of be usable for a nice bit of PR for a bloke here to come back in. Is he completely done?
Yeah.
I think he is completely finished. There's no kind of.
I can't see. I don't think he had any interest in driving the RB.
No,
he had an interest in driving the RBR, and putting up with the RB was how he got there. McLaren aren't going to take him back. Ferrari don't need him.
No.
Mercedes, by the time there's a seat available potentially in the Mercedes, is 26, and Daniel Ricciardo at that point is about 81 years old and hasn't driven an F1 car for 2 years, and the last time he did it wasn't that impressive. So the only other teams that take him are no real different to RB, where he didn't really care about it anyway. I can see Danny Rick either going and doing IndyCar, a NASCAR stint, or V8 Supercars. I think if it depends for me, I think he will go and race something with wheels on it.
So I'm not so sure about that.
I just think he won't initially. I don't think we'll hear much from Danny Rick for 12 months. And then I think he will want to go and drive something quite quickly. And I think the question will become, do I want to spend most of my time in Australia? Because if so, he'll go do V8 Supercars. Because the thing is as well, he can go drive whatever he wants. Anyone will have him. He can decide that he can go and, he might decide MotoGPs for me. Guarantee you a MotoGP team throws as much money and motorbike training courses as that man wants to go and be in their team.
As he's like pottering around Perth on like a little scooter with his L plates
he's a
on the back
farm boy.
of it.
He'll have ridden one at the farm. I think it genuinely will come down to, does he want to spend most of his time in Australia? If so, go and nest yourself into a VR Supercars team. Perfect. Do you fancy becoming more American than you already are? If so, NASCAR or IndyCar would bend over backwards to be able to say, Danny Rick's here. It's just the value he would bring to that from my metric of great F1 drivers of cash and merch and image. The world is his oyster, or he might just go kick about on Scarborough Beach and just spend the millions that he's accumulated and put his feet up for a little bit, and then Sky will get him on the podcast every couple of weeks.
He's such a good bloke and such a good personality.
Yes, I'll ask him to be on the podcast.
Well, okay, well, by all means, just text his mum for us. And he's done such an amazing job for Formula One. With Crofty and Brundle kind of picking and choosing what they want to do when they want to do it.
Yeah.
To Formula One go to Daniel Ricciardo with an open checkbook when the time's right, not now, because I think he'd probably just punch him straight in the face, or he's still crying, or so. I'm not sure what's going on, but hopefully all is well, Daniel.
Yeah.
And just go, come and be the next Martin Brundle. Come and do Daniel Ricciardo's grid walks. And be that kind of Formula One expert for the fans that love you to kind of continue to be able to adore you. Because you've got as good of a personality, if not better. You obviously different, but a younger personality. You will have relationships with those people on the grid. You will be able to provide your expertise for whoever they decide to go for as the commentator. Could that be a way that Daniel continues? Clearly, if he does that, he's not going to be doing a NASCAR season or an IndyCar season or a V8 season or whatever that might be.
I like the idea that they tried and executed really badly of the Daniel Ricciardo Manning cast watch along. Press your red button and your audio channels are F1 TV commentary. But I think I can't see him doing really formal commentary. But I like the idea of watching a race and hearing Danny Rick chat about it in a more casual setting and analysing it and watching it sat next to fan Danny Rick that is very good at the sport and very invested in the sport. So I like the idea of that side of it rather than him having to become a little bit too invested in it. That said, I think he would do the Jolyon Palmer role, F1 TV style, incredibly well. But yeah, I think there would be value in that. They tried, ESPN tried, didn't they? And they just did not get the format right on that watch along. And I don't think we should use that as a proof of concept. I think they had the right idea by just horrid execution.
Well, it was a classic example of people coming up with a great idea but having no ability or understanding on how to execute it.
Yeah.
And if it's something that Daniel wanted to do, I would argue and say that it should be led by Daniel, not a bunch of people in suits that think it's a great idea because we can get it sponsored by Bud Light or whatever.
Can you imagine Daniel Ricciardo
on the Lapdown podcast as the third co-host?
Daniel Ricciardo, no, second. It's an Australian Argentinian podcast now. It's an Australian podcast where we only talk about Argentinian drivers and drink mate. Imagine this, right? Danny Rick on a sofa, Nico Rosberg beanbag chair,
Oh, he's a bit of a miserable git, though, isn't he, Nico?
Exactly. And he's balanced out by the world's biggest Labrador, right? And we just get both ends of the spectrum watching F1 races telling us everything that's good about F1. Tell me that doesn't sell millions. I don't know of what, but it sells millions of money.
I mean, it might do. It might do. I don't know. I don't know. I don't feel like I'm ready to concede the fact that he won't be there in Formula One. And I know, like, he's obviously on the wrong side of 30. In comparison to a lot of people on the grid, he has a fantastic record.
Yes.
And there are a lot of people on that grid that will, respectfully to a lot of them, they won't develop to be anything more than where they are. I don't see Yuki Tsunoda stepping up into the Red Bull team and suddenly winning world championships. Guan Yu Zhou, he isn't going to do anything. Lance Stroll clearly isn't. Colapinto, as much as we love him, isn't going to be. I'm stating facts. He isn't going to be in the sport next year. We don't know about Kimi Antonelli. Clearly, Sergio Perez isn't going to do anything more than that, and there's a great chance that Sergio Perez wins no more than the 6th Grand Prix that he's already got to his name.
I can see Sergio Perez, by the way, not racing in 2025. Just going to throw that in at the end.
Yeah, well, I saw something about that the other day, and they were going to talk about kind of bringing in Dennis Hauger or whatever.
Yeah.
But all of those people, I don't necessarily think after 257 races are going to have a better career than Daniel Ricciardo.
No. And they're not going to have made more money for the team. I keep going back to the business of it as well, but they're not going to have made more money for the team in sponsors and PR than Daniel Ricciardo. And they're probably not going to send it down. Well, actually, no, Franco is sending it down the inside like Danny Rick does, but they're not going to send it down the inside late on the brakes like Danny Rick does in such a way. I think we'll see more.
He's not going to be a world champion. Certainly not at Alpine. Esteban Ocon, again, he isn't going to do that there. Pierre Gasly, probably not. Like, there's
Nico Hulkenberg still hasn't after 800,000 races.
Exactly. So I don't know. I'm not ready to say it's done. But I think it is very difficult, as you've just said, to kind of path a route back in for him.
Yeah. Certainly on track. I think that's us for another episode of Lacto Podcast. We've got 4 weeks off now from Formula One just because, for absolutely no reason at all. So if you've got anything that you would like us to cover off on over the next 4 weeks, I'm not sure if we'll still be weekly over the gap. It kind of depends if anything happens. Because if all the drivers
next week, so that would be difficult.
There you go. If you've got anything you would like us to discuss while the drivers are putting their feet up, you can email lapdownpod@gmail.com, or you can comment on TikTok that we see and read all of them, or at least I do. Dan might not do. He might be bitter to the internet by now. Or on YouTube or Insta or anything, you can engage with us on there, and let's have a little chat about F1. And if you'd like to go on and see what Dan's up to during the day, you can follow him at
DanJads_.
And if you'd like to go and see me play games on the internet, you could do that on Twitch at Hey Look It's Alex. And we'll be back at some point over this autumn break to talk about more F1 until it's going to suck, by the way, that our next one is COTA. It's like Danny Rick's second home race, and there's going to be no horse in the paddock. God damn it.
Yeah, anyway. There's going to be no Danny Rick in cowboy boots, no Stetsons, none of those little kind of ties that look like shoelaces.
Yeah, I don't understand them or what they're doing.
No, I'm not sure either.
No, but I think
I've watched a lot of Yellowstone, but I still haven't quite figured that bit out. No. But I assume, I don't know. Maybe they act the same way as a drawstring and a hoodie.
Possible.
Could do. I don't know.
These are the questions that you get on this podcast. This F1 podcast we're talking about. It's not a neckerchief, is it? That's the Boy Scout thing.
Yeah, honestly, I don't even know what it'd be called.
No.
I haven't got a clue.
No. Oh, well. Hey, maybe we'll find that out before the next episode. But thank you for listening. Thank you for engaging with us and liking TikToks and whatever. Hey, why not send this to a friend? How about that? How about you send the pod to a friend?
Or if you think we're shit, send it to your enemy.
Or that. The view numbers all help, to be honest. Doesn't matter if you like it or not. Please like it. Give it 5 stars. Anyway, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye.